If I had found the phone in a drawer, I might still have talked myself out of what it meant. But I found it wrapped in a baby blanket inside a storage bin full of Christmas ornaments. That is not where absent-minded people leave electronics. That is where deliberate people put things they never want casually discovered. 3 years earlier, my husband Nolan came home irritated and exhausted after our son Micah's Saturday soccer game and said the second phone his company issued him was gone. He said Micah had been playing with the zipper on Nolan's work bag while we were packing up chairs and juice boxes, and the phone must have slipped out somewhere near the field. He drove back before dark to look for it. He called the league office the next morning. He complained for a week about corporate security forms and device replacements, and how ridiculous it was that a child could create so much hassle by touching one zipper. I remember defending Micah more than once. He had been 6. He cried the first time Nolan mentioned the phone because he thought he had cost his dad his job. Nolan hugged him, told him accidents happen, and said the phone was only a work tool. That became the official family version. The phone was lost. Our son felt bad. Everyone moved on. At least that is what I thought. By the time I found it, Micah was 9 and had grown into the kind of kid who apologizes before he even fully understands what went wrong. He still remembered the phone story. If Nolan needed a charger or couldn't find his keys, Micah would joke. Lightly, but not lightly enough. At least I didn't lose a phone this time. Children keep shame longer than adults notice. The afternoon I found it, I was in the basement, looking for spare batteries, because our smoke detector upstairs had started chirping. I pulled one storage bin down, then another. In the third was an old yellow blanket from Micah's toddler years, folded around something heavy. At first, I thought it was a candle holder. Then I felt the squared edges. Then I saw the cracked black case with the little silver initial sticker Nolan used to put on all his work gear. N.R. I sat on the concrete floor longer than I want to admit. Not because I understood everything. Because I understood enough. The first feeling was not rage. It was embarrassment. Embarrassment is what arrives when reality reveals that you were managed. I plugged the phone into an old charger we keep near the holiday bins. Nothing happened for a minute. Then the screen flashed. The battery symbol appeared, and after another minute, the lock screen lit up. Still active. Still connected. Still receiving signal. My whole body went cold in that ugly practical way that has nothing cinematic about it. My hands did not tremble. They felt efficient. That was worse. There were no dramatic wallpaper photos or heart emojis waiting for me on the home screen. Just a generic company background and a stack of notifications that began arriving almost immediately once the phone had enough charge. 2 missed calls from a number with no contact name. An airline app alert about an upcoming boarding window from 2 months earlier. A message preview from someone saved as M. Let me know when you land next time so I can time it better. I did not open anything yet. I just stared at that one line until my brain started sorting old moments into new boxes. There had been several work trips over the last 2 years where Nolan's location sharing mysteriously froze. He always had an explanation ready. The hotel Wi-Fi was strange. His battery had died in a cab. He had to switch to the company phone for meetings, and forgot which device was active. The app was glitching again. Why did I care so much about a dot on a map if I trusted him? That last question had done the most damage. Not because it answered anything. Because it turned my confusion into my character flaw. I had accepted that framing more often than I want to say out loud. There is a special humiliation in realizing your effort to be reasonable may have been used against you. I brought the phone upstairs and sat at the kitchen island like it was a legal document. The house was quiet. Micah was at a friend's house. Nolan was still at work. The smoke detector had stopped chirping because I had fixed it, which somehow made everything feel even more absurd. A normal domestic day can hold the beginning of a ruined marriage without changing its lighting. Once the phone charged enough, I opened the recent call log. The unsaved number appeared over and over again, mostly on days Nolan had traveled, not hundreds of times. That would have been too obvious. Just enough for a second pattern to emerge beneath the first one. I checked the messages next. Most had been deleted. That told me as much as any message could. People in innocent circumstances do not maintain empty histories on hidden devices. What remained were fragments, a rideshare confirmation, a forwarded hotel address I did not recognize, a thread from M with only 3 visible lines left because the rest had clearly been wiped. You said Thursday, not Wednesday. No, She still thinks it was the Denver client dinner. Call me from the other phone. The other phone? I should probably tell you that this was not a marriage full of screaming or obvious collapse. That is part of what made the discovery so disorienting. Nolan was attentive in the ways that photograph well. He remembered to bring coffee if I had a rough morning. He sat through school recitals with his phone face down. He texted if he was running late. He knew how to perform steadiness. What I had not understood was that steadiness can be one more tool when somebody has decided that predictability is the easiest disguise. I wanted to call him immediately. I wanted to throw the phone at his chest and ask him if hiding it in our child's baby blanket had seemed poetic at the time. But anger without information is often a gift to the person with more practice lying. So I did the least dramatic thing possible. I logged into our carrier account. The line had never been disconnected. It had been renamed on the plan as Backup Business Device. AutoPay had been covering it for 3 years. 3 years of me reviewing household budgets and thinking I was looking at ordinary charges. 3 years of my own money helping preserve the lie. That detail made me angrier than the message from M. Infidelity is a betrayal. Administrative betrayal is somehow pettier and more intimate at the same time. It means the lie had to survive ordinary Tuesdays. I opened our shared credit card account next and started searching old travel days. Again, nothing movie-worthy. No grand secret apartment. No jewelry receipts. No obvious confession. Hidden in plain sight. But there were repeated small rideshare charges in cities where Nolan had told me he walked from the hotel to client dinners. There was one boutique hotel charge in Phoenix that never appeared on his expense reimbursements. There were coffee shop charges at hours that did not match his meeting schedules. One strange receipt means nothing. A cluster becomes a climate. By the time Micah got home, I had hidden the phone in the back of my closet and washed my face twice. He ran in talking about a friend's trampoline and asking if we still had popsicles. I remember thinking that childhood continues, no matter what adults break around it. That night at dinner, Nolan told a funny story about someone in finance accidentally replying all to a company thread. He laughed. I laughed once in the right place. Micah asked whether Dad was going to miss his Tuesday game because of next week's Chicago trip. Nolan said, "Only one night, buddy. I'll be back before you know it." Then he looked at me and added, "I'll share the hotel info this time since you worried last trip. This time, since you worried." I almost admired the instinct. Even with the hidden phone sitting 10 feet away in my closet, he was still gently nudging the story toward me being anxious and him being accommodating. That level of habit does not begin on the day a lie is discovered. It is an architecture. I did not confront him that night. I called my sister after Micah was asleep and asked if she could keep him the next evening without questions. She said yes before I finished the sentence. There are people who hear your voice and understand that efficiency is love. The next afternoon, after Micah went to her house, I put the hidden phone on the kitchen table beside the regular one Nolan always used at home. I also printed the carrier page showing the active line and highlighted the rename date. I did not want an argument. I wanted gravity. Then he tried. He said, "Where did you find that?" Not, "What are you talking about?" Not, "That's impossible." Not, "I can explain everything." Where did you find that? People tell on themselves in the first sentence. I asked him whether he wanted to start with the story about Micah losing it at soccer or the story about why it was still active. He sat down very slowly. He rubbed his forehead. He said it was not what it looked like, which is a phrase so overused it should arrive with its own alarm. According to Nolan, he had kept the phone after finding it weeks later under the passenger seat of his car. He said he never told me because Micah had already felt so bad, and he did not want to embarrass him again. He said he kept the line active because there were old work contacts tied to it. He said he hid it because he knew I would misread it. That was the moment something in me went from hurt to finished. Not because the explanation was impossible. Because even now, even with the object on the table and the bills highlighted, and the deleted messages hanging in the air, his instinct was still to cast me as the unreliable narrator of my own life. I asked him who M was. He said a consultant. I asked why consultants need messages about timing landings and calling from the other phone. He said it looked bad, but was work-related. I asked why the phone was hidden in ornament storage wrapped in our son's old blanket. He said he panicked. There is a point in some conversations where the facts stop mattering because the structure is already visible. A person who can lie clearly will often keep lying long after the tactical moment has passed, simply because surrendering the frame feels more dangerous than surrendering the truth. I told him I did not need a cleaner explanation, I needed separation. Not maybe, not after we calmed down, now, he cried then. Real tears, I think. I am sure some part of him felt genuine loss. People can be devastated by consequences they spent years engineering. He asked whether there was any way back. I said there might have been, before he made our child the cover story. There might have been, before he let me question my own judgment, every time something did not add up. But once a lie starts recruiting your child and your sanity, it is no longer a private mistake. It is a system. He slept at his brother's that night. I met with a lawyer 2 days later. I also made an appointment for Micah with a child therapist, not because I intended to unload adult facts onto him, but because children know when a house changes temperature, even if nobody explains the weather. Nolan asked me twice afterward not to mention the original phone story around Micah because he did not want him carrying guilt for something that was never his fault. That request might have been the first decent thing he said, and it arrived years too late. I told him I agreed on one condition. He would never again allow Micah to joke about losing that phone, even gently, even in passing, even as family folklore. If the story had been used to hold up a lie, then the story was over. The next week, Micah made one of his usual little self-blaming comments while looking for a missing shin guard. He laughed and said, "Guess I'm still the family loses stuff guy." Before I could respond, Nolan went very still and said, "No, you're not. That phone was never your fault." "I handled that badly and I'm sorry." Micah nodded and moved on. Children often accept the truth in simple portions adults should have offered sooner. I went into the pantry after that and cried harder than I had during the confrontation. Not because Nolan had finally told one clean sentence. Because I realized how low the bar had become. That is what deception does in a home. It does not just hide a fact. It retrains your gratitude. I do not know whether the hidden phone was tied to one affair, several, or a version of himself he kept separate from our family because compartmentalization felt easier than honesty. At some point, the taxonomy stopped mattering to me. The object told me what I needed to know. Not every detail, just the most important one. He had looked at me, looked at our son, looked at our ordinary little life, and decided confusion was an acceptable building material. Once you know that, the rest is paperwork.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.